Hello, welcome back to my channel and welcome if you're new. My name is Michaela Carpenter. I'm a nutrition and life coach and I specialize in helping people overcome restrictive dieting and emotional eating. So on today's video I'm going to be talking about why you are addicted to sugar and how to start overcoming that. So the number one reason that people get really addicted to sugar is their body's natural craving for sugar. So when our blood sugars start going down, so when we haven't eaten in a while, we do start getting literally cravings for sugar, because our body is craving that energy, that easy energy fix, and sugar is the best source for that. So, and our body doesn't, at a physiological level, our body doesn't distinguish between the processed sugary foods versus the whole foods such as fruits and that sort of thing, which are obviously really good for our bodies and really nourishing to our bodies, compared to the less nutritious foods, which aren't as nourishing to our bodies, but they still provide that energy source that our bodies need. So when we find ourselves, obviously our bodies start to pick up on the fact that those prepackaged foods and those foods that are higher in things like fat and stuff are easier to digest and are quicker energy fixes than things like whole foods. So we do naturally, at a physiological level as well, start really craving those easy energy foods. So that is where those really intense cravings can come from, because our bodies literally are craving those easy energy foods, which obviously leads to that addiction to sugar. And this is one of the main reasons why we find ourselves addicted to sugar, and we kind of can get really stuck in that. So there are a few different parts to how this becomes such a habit. I'm going to talk about the next part after I've kind of explained what you can do to kind of start overcoming the sugar addiction in terms of the physiological cravings that you have for sugar. So to really start overcoming this physiological part of the cravings for sugar, it's important to make sure that you are eating enough throughout the day of the nutritious, nourishing foods such as whole foods. So also making sure you have nutrient-dense snacks available to you for when you may be going between a meal and you're starting to feel hungry. Starting to really incorporate more of those whole foods and those nutritious snacks into your diet will really help at that physiological level. And obviously it's going to take some persistence, and it's going to be a little bit harder as well, but it's important to understand, when you understand the physiological side of it, and that your body is really just craving sugar and it's kind of just fallen into this habit of eating those foods. So I hope by understanding the physiological side to the cravings that sugar can create, you're able to understand the importance of making sure you're eating enough, and eating enough of the nutritious foods as well, to really make sure we're nourishing our bodies really well. So that is the first part of it. So the second part is that you're stuck in the habit of eating sugar. So it could be just a habit that's been formed. So it could be some sort of response to a trigger. And the trigger, for example, it could be something as simple as you sitting down for a hot chocolate or a coffee after you're finished work or something, and reaching for biscuits because you were feeling really hungry and just you really wanted something to eat. So that could have happened once, and that could have naturally, just the sitting down after work with a hot drink could start turning into a habit, because that's just kind of the response you've had. And oftentimes it's coming from our thoughts, the triggers the way that we respond to certain triggers. So you could be thinking, I'm so tired, I just want something to eat, something to fill me, and just really wanting something that's easy. So reaching for those foods, and to really just fill that energy that you need, give you the energy fix that you're needing, and that can turn into a habit. So also in this scenario, the different thoughts and feelings that you're having after work, for example, feelings of stress and just feeling like relaxing after work, can also be a part of the trigger that is causing you to reach for the biscuits that you find yourself reaching. So by taking the same, or having the same response to the trigger again and again, like each day or each week, whatever it is, we find ourselves really reinforcing that habit. And over time, it becomes such a natural reaction that we don't even realize we're doing it. It's just something we do. It's just become a part of us, a part of our life, a part of our routine. So that is really how a habit can be formed, and especially around the sugar cravings, and how we can really just basically be reinforcing the use of a highly processed food as a way of giving ourselves energy, but also could be to do with how we're dealing with our emotions as well, and how our thoughts that are coming up through the day. So it's basically a response to a certain trigger that is causing us to crave the sugar, and it has become part of a natural routine. It's just become part of a normal routine and what we're used to. Basically, over time, sugar has just become the way you respond to or react to certain triggers. So to overcome this, it's important to first address, obviously break the habit, but we need to address and understand what the trigger is and exactly where it's coming from to be able to start overcoming that and breaking that. Once we know what the trigger is, we can kind of start looking at ways we can react, respond, or start shifting the way we are responding to the trigger. So I've done a blog post on how to start really doing this. So if you're wanting to read that, I'll link that below as well. So coming off of the first point that I made around it being an easy energy fix, and that's kind of how at the physiological level, how it's become a habit, it's important to also address and dig a bit deeper and make sure it hasn't also become an emotional eating response to certain feelings. So even if you do think it is just the easy energy fix, you're really just kind of dependent on the sugar, I really encourage you to dig into this and listen to this part as well, just to make sure that there isn't more going on there that you're just not aware of going on. So yeah, if you've been addicted to sugar for quite a while, it can be hard to really distinguish, like I said before, around what the trigger exactly is, and because it may have become so natural and such a normal part of the way you deal with things. So it's important to really ask what could be going on here and really get curious about whether there is some sort of emotional response going on. More often than not, it is some sort of avoidance of feelings or some sort of thoughts that are causing us to emotionally eat or to reach for the sugary foods, and that just reinforces the habits that we have. It really is the avoidance of certain feelings. So feelings like stress, overwhelm, sadness, things like that can really bring a lot of discomfort, and by eating the sugary foods we can find some comfort and really just kind of avoid those feelings a little bit, and that's just how we've been able to cope with those feelings. So it's important to really ask ourselves and get really super honest and curious with ourselves about what the trigger could possibly be. So to really overcome this, we do need, like I said, we need to start becoming aware of what's going on, really ask ourselves and get curious about what could be going on and what things we could be trying to avoid and why we might be trying to avoid them. So I've done a blog post on overcoming not letting feelings of stress and overwhelm turn into emotional eating, which really addresses this, even if it's not feelings of stress and overwhelm. It could be other feelings like frustration, sadness, things like that, which you'll find really helpful in really just starting to dig into this and understand what is going on and how to start really overcoming that. Another reason why people get addicted to sugar is because they're really just trying, or continue being addicted to sugar, I should say, is because they are trying to cut it all out at once and just telling themselves that they will just cut it all out and that'll solve their problems. So by doing this, we really put these sugary foods on a pedestal, and we are making ourselves want those foods and crave those foods even more at a psychological level, because we are telling ourselves no. That really makes us want them more, to be honest, and it really puts those foods on a pedestal as something so amazing that, why wouldn't we want them? And that's why we have to hold back from them. So it can really just create a unhelpful dynamic with those foods that really doesn't address the real triggers and things that are going on under the surface. And also they just really make us crave them more. So they do the opposite of what we're really wanting them to do. So to start really overcoming this, it's really important to start shifting the focus towards adding in more nourishing foods rather than focusing on taking out a whole bunch of foods. So yeah, just really focusing on the amazing nourishing foods that we're bringing into our diet and starting to really crowd out the less nutritious foods. So I've done a blog post or video on this before, so I will also leave this linked below. Last point I wanted to make was just don't get down on yourself if you have something with sugar in it that is really high in sugar or whatever it is. It's important to come from a place of compassion and kindness towards ourselves if we're ever wanting to really be able to overcome these things and be at a place where we're just getting really curious and becoming really understanding towards ourselves and creating these really, really big changes. So being able to overcome things like sugar addiction. So if we're coming at it and just getting down on ourselves if we eat sugary foods when we're trying not to, which obviously is not what I said before, like we don't want to be focusing on that, but if we do find ourselves in a position where we are really just getting down on ourselves for eating the sugary food, it's important to remember that we are unlearning habits that have been around for a long time. Maybe they've been around most of your life, or maybe it's been a year or so. It'll be different for everyone, but it's important to realize that these habits have been around for a while and they're going to take time to unlearn, and we've got to come from a place of curiosity and understanding so that we can really get to the bottom of what's going on and address those things, especially when it comes to the triggers, which is something that really does need to be addressed in order to overcome sugar addiction. So yes, basically just be kind to yourself and show yourself compassion and understanding in trying to overcome the sugar addiction so that you really are able to overcome it and feel really good in doing that, because obviously we want to feel good in the things we're doing. We don't want to feel miserable, and we don't have to feel miserable in overcoming things like sugar addiction. So yeah, that is basically today's video, and I hope you found the points really helpful. I went through a few different things, and obviously I've left you a few different links to kind of go through and learn more about different areas around overcoming the sugar addiction. But I hope overall you got a really good idea of what things you need to really start looking at and doing differently to really start overcoming the sugar addiction. So I'd love it if you leave a comment below letting me know what you learned from today's video, what's one thing you've really taken away from it. And yeah, that is all, and I post weekly videos, so I will see you next week.